What makes the achievement of emotional sobriety so difficult is the habits we have, the patterns we have in our behavior, the habitual ways that we've come to think about things. We have to really become aware of those things in order to challenge them, because the consciousness that has created a lot of the problems in our life cannot solve it, cannot change things. So what happens is the first step is waking up.
Well, I wanted to start out by reading with you something I received today I received it yesterday. That was very moving to me. And I wanted to share it with you. And then I wanted to share an experience I had when I was at South Bay Hospital around this issue of gratitude. So my daughter, Cecilia Marie, is 3 years old, and she attends this wonderful Montessori school called Maria's House. And the executive director of the school is Miss Lainey Walker. And Miss Walker oftentimes sends us these wonderful emails. And I can't wait to get one of Miss Walker's emails, because she is incredibly articulate and always puts together and constructs a very, very thoughtful and thought-provoking email. And of course, Thanksgiving has given her a chance to use her skills and her talents to once again do that. So I'm going to read you what we received, because it meant so much to me and my family. So she starts out by, "Dear Maria's House, families, faculty, and friends. Many of us know this sign: an open hand, fingertips to the mouth, then gently extending down, palm up and empty, gesturing towards someone in particular. It's the sign for thank you. American Sign Language traces its modern roots to 1817, when the founder of what we now know as the American School for the Deaf, Thomas Hopkins, published a carefully considered guide for a communication system that would be employed in his campus. His method was drawn from a number of pre-existing practices, mostly French. Many of the 1870 signs had been used within the silent cloisters of the French monastic communities since the founding of the Cistercian order in 1098. Wow, they go back a long time. Some signs were older, predating the Roman era. One of those signs that predated the Roman era was this sign of thank you." She goes, "Now think about it with me for a minute. These are words we take for granted in our Western culture, like grace in the Eucharist. Both are associated with table gatherings, with the pause before the feast, a moment spent acknowledging a complex miracle that all life relies on: food. For as long as we've been recording history, our species has taken time in silence, song, word, or gesture to reflect on this mystery. We say thank you. We express a single sentiment called thank you to those who hunted and gathered, sowed, tended, and reaped, to every hand that prepared every dish. We say thank you. So here we stand, the year behind us, which has taken much, required more, and still brought us to this season. The pause that we take collectively today is strongly tied to another challenging time, when a 50-year-old Abraham Lincoln and his friend William Seward penned a Thanksgiving proclamation just 3 months after the Battle of Gettysburg, and 1 month prior to his speech at the same battlefield. In the midst of chaos, with the nation divided to the point of bloodshed, he called on those he served to set aside the last Thursday of November as a time to reflect on the blessings of fruitful fields and healthful skies, to remember all those who have become widows, orphans, mourners, and sufferers. We can do these things even as we look at each other, speaking, singing, or singing our thanks that we are here together and that the mystery of life, growth, and change continues within and around us, evidenced powerfully day to day in the children we hold dear. And this touches me. She goes, "Thank you for sharing your precious, mysteriously wonderful sons and daughters with us. They are a constant joy, the life of our house, and one more compelling reason to be thankful. I look forward to seeing you on Monday." God, what a very thoughtful reflection, huh? In terms of what's going on. And this is the time of year that we stop and then really give thanks to so many different things. And I think if you've been with us now and in this journey of understanding to emotional sobriety and on the journey of trying to achieve it in our lives, you'll understand that there are many things that we're grateful for that are not typical. Like as we start to struggle and realize how important taking the struggle we're having and using it to grow ourselves, we become grateful for the difficulties in our life, for the struggles we have, not just for all the wonderful things that we're given. And so it's a very important time for us to look beyond what we usually think of as gratitude and think of it in a much, much bigger way. But a warning must be given with this as well. When I first started my career, I worked in the alcohol rehabilitation service at San Pedro Peninsula Hospital, and then again at South Bay Hospital. And these were very, very innovative, incredibly well-run professional programs. And one of the things we did that was quite unusual is that every patient that was an inpatient would be brought into a group with the entire staff and to be given a feedback and a progress report every Monday. And we would talk about the things that the person would need to work on the next week, things we were concerned about. And it was such a powerful experience because the entire staff was there. The nursing staff was there. The recreational therapist, their medical doctor was there. All the counselors that had to do with them inpatient-wise. And this program was unique in that the families also started in the outpatient program as soon as a person went into the inpatient program. So it was an incredibly powerful moment. And, patients were nervous as all can be about coming in. And sometimes the feedback would be challenging and encourage them to look at something. Sometimes it would be positive and recognizing the hard work that they were doing to turn their lives around. Well, at the time that I'm thinking about, I was also working with my dear friend and mentor, Dr. Walter Kempler. And Bill Rader, who is the medical director of this program, was always interested in getting more input. What could we do differently? And so he invited Walter to sit in on a session and give us some feedback on what he saw in one of these staffing sessions. And it just so happened that that day we graduated probably 3 or 4 different patients. And when a patient was leaving treatment, what we would do is we take a picture of them when they came in. And back then we didn't have digital possibilities. We showed a slide. We made slides and we projected the slide with a slide projector up on a screen. We showed them their before picture and we showed them their after picture. And we gave them feedback. You never have to look like this again. And I would say 95% of the people that went through this program, their lives were so powerfully impacted by the incredibly powerful work that I was doing, the counselors were doing, and the staff was doing in their groups and in their treatment. And after everybody left, Bill turned to Dr. Rader, turned to Dr. Kempler and said, well, what kind of feedback do you have for us in terms of what you saw going on? And he said, I just really have one concern. Bill said, well, what is that concern? What did you see happening in the staff meeting that brought up some concern? He goes, I'm afraid your patients are leaving with too much gratitude. And Bill said, well, what does that mean that they're leaving with too much gratitude? Well, he said, I think it's going to be hard if when they leave treatment and they start having trouble, that they're going to come back and ask you for more help, because they're going to feel like they've disappointed you and they've let you down. And that somehow the gratitude that they're carrying with them when they leave treatment is going to choke them off and stop them from coming to reach out if they run into trouble, because they're going to be filled with shame that they've somehow disappointed you. Wow, what an aha moment that was. Could it be that gratitude is not always this great thing that we make it out to be? Could it be that sometimes our gratitude will stop us from saying what we need to say or exposing our vulnerability when we're struggling, especially with someone who has helped us so tremendously in our lives and turn things around? Is it easy to go to your sponsor and to admit your fault with someone who spent so much time helping you put your life together? And then if you've gone out and done something that might have been the total opposite of what you and your sponsor talked about doing in your life? Now, Bill Rader, in his wisdom, turned to Dr. Kempler and says, well, what do you think we could do about that? He says, I would poison the well with those patients. And how would you do that? Dr. Rader asked. He says, well, what I would tell them is I would say to them, look, when you leave here, and we appreciate your gratitude so much, it touches us deeply. But if you're truly grateful, what it will mean to us is that when you run into trouble, which you're likely to do, that you will reach out to us for help. That if you really want to express your gratitude, you do so by reaching out to us when you're running into trouble. Wow. What a reframe of that whole experience. From that point on, that's what we did with every patient. We gave them the warning that their gratitude could prevent them from coming back. And if they really wanted to express gratitude, they would come back to us and tell us when they struggled and turn to us for help. So I share that with you tonight for you to be thoughtful about this in your life. Does your gratitude choke you off? Does it stop you from saying what your truth is? Because that's not what it's for. It's to appreciate the fullness of your life, not to cut you off from life. It's to keep you connected to your life in a good way, not to diminish your possibilities. And so I leave you with a warning. If you're truly grateful, you will be open and honest about what you're struggling with, and not set yourself up with these expectations that you should be more than you are. Emotional sobriety is learning to be, okay with who we are as we are. That's not to say that we're not constantly striving to develop the best possible attitude, towards life and towards ourselves and towards our relationships that we can. Of course, that's a big part of what emotional sobriety is. But it's also about being aware and thoughtful about some things, and especially, looking at concepts like gratitude and seeing all the different dimensions to them. So with that being said, I will turn this over to Roger. I don't know if Thom has joined us this evening or not. Is Thom Rutledge also in the house?
Yeah, right here.
Well, he is right here. My God, I thought the turkeys might have chased you off your property by now.
No, I did get to watching television, and then I thought, oh shit, I gotta go do this meeting. It's like because it was because the day was different, and I got confused.
That can happen.
It happens.
Well,
buddy, it happens. Happy Thanksgiving. Yes. Well, I'll just say this. What you made me think of with this is how one of the things I was just kind of a tag team off of what you're talking about with Dr. Kempler's feedback is, I've recognized for a long time that when we first come in, people first come into therapy, and I certainly have experienced this as a client as well as a therapist. Sometimes it's just easier to rat yourself out and tell all with somebody you don't know very well, and then you have to be aware that as you get to know the person who is your therapist, as I got to know the people that were helping me, and it's like then you develop the relationship, which is a big part of the healing. Is then you start to care what they think, and it becomes harder to share. People are often surprised by that it's harder to share something, and I love this idea of not letting gratitude, or block us. And specifically what it makes me think of is, and I think we can think about that in this community of ours here, is the idea that we need to be practicing everything that we're learning in our relationships with one another. And so what that means is taking risk. That means it means what it means is, first of all, don't put people on pedestals. And if you do, recognize it and pull them down. It's because a lot of times when we do that, I promise you, anytime we're putting somebody on a pedestal, they don't deserve to be there. And it's not, and it's not a comfortable place to be anyway. So it's not, how often, I'll ask you, Roger and Alan both, where you have clients who will say like, but I'm scared, I was worried that I was going to disappoint you, and you go like, no, it's like, and I used to be, I just say, the only way you really disappoint me probably is, and first of all, if I'm disappointed, I'll talk to you about it. I'll tell you about it, and I will. But I said, just basically not being honest with me would maybe be the closest thing we get to disappointment. But even if we can talk about that, we'll be okay. It's like, it's so important to be able to say, I just want to emphasize, don't let anything stop you from reaching out for help that you need, and I like that. I love the idea of if you are grateful for what we've given you, then come let us know when you need more help. But the other thing I would add to that too is be sure if you're experiencing gratitude for what we've gained in healing, be sure we'll be talking about that more in the rest of the steps too, but be sure you're passing it along, because I'd love that old line in 12 steps of you to keep it, you have to give it away. And it's like, and I like the idea that we keep doing that and do that. But the other thing is not just reaching back to people who helped you before, but to learn the lesson that it's worth it, having the courage to reach out to new people too, to be more and more, hopefully you can generalize that it's okay. There are plenty of people in this world where it's okay to be vulnerable. And, and on a personal note, I'll just say that today was special for Dee Dee and I, because a friend of ours, my friend Trish, that I did groups. She and I were in work together and did groups together for 25 years. We back in the old days when groups were everything. We were doing 6 to 8 groups a week back in the 1900s, and we learned so much about group therapy doing that. But a few years ago, she died of that glioblastoma brain cancer that John McCain had. It's like it was, we lost her too soon, but she had married a fella about 10 years before that had come into our fold, and a couple of days ago he called and said that he wanted to take Dee Dee and I to lunch for Thanksgiving, and matter of fact, he's actually engaged. He's getting married, and he wanted to introduce this woman to us. And of course, that was a big deal. It was, we missed Trish a lot, but we had lunch with them today. But I just finished saying to Dee Dee a moment ago is that, the simplest version is I said, we made a new friend today, because we loved her. She was, it was wonderful that she was so different from our friends. So it was like, there was no sense of our little brains couldn't do anything where there's somebody trying to step into her place. But it was a reconnection to Charles, to our friend who had been married to, we knew Charles for a much shorter time than we knew Trish, but I'm not even sure if there's a point to this other than one of the things I was filled with, and Dee Dee and I both talked about this, about just filled with gratitude about a reconnection that we absolutely could not have predicted. And Dee Dee loves tradition. And we walked back in the house when they dropped us off, and she said, I think we could have some traditions with those people. And it was like, and I texted my friend Charles and told him that and said, that's huge when it comes from Dee Dee, because that's so special to her. And so anyway, that's completely, I thought I was going to cleverly be able to loop that back in and make it make sense to what I was saying earlier, but I have nothing to do that with. But it's it is a moment of gratitude, or a full day of gratitude for that today for me, and I've just really enjoyed it and had a wonderful thing. And I would also just say is, not blowing smoke, not kissing anybody's ass here, but I am grateful for you two guys. Among others, with Thom and with Brian and with everybody who's been a part of this whole community. We've talked about it a lot, but you and I, Alan, have talked about it quite a bit. I have grown so much since we've been in this group, and I keep growing from it. And it's a process with the community, and I thank you guys very much. I love you.
Thank you, Thom, very much, man. Very much. And by the way, you did loop it back in spite of yourself. No, it looped back to gratitude totally, man.
All right. Thank you.
It does. You're grateful to have this new person as part of this new relationship in your life. And so is Dee Dee, man. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, leave it up to you two to give a different slant on gratitude, right? As you called it, Alan, a reframe where there's such a thing as too much gratitude if it doesn't let us be ourselves enough, if it leads us to feel shame and then not to be able to be who we need to be in our shame of letting somebody down. Right. So I really just wanted to highlight that again, because I think it's something I've experienced and I imagine many of you have as well. I see a big link between gratitude and humility. We've talked a fair amount about humility, but I wanted to tie it in because I was doing some reading about both today. And I came across a quote by C.S. Lewis, the famous author of the Chronicles of Narnia and Oxford professor and all that stuff. He wrote a lot. He wrote a lot about Christianity and Christian theology. He wrote a lot about pride and humility, and there's a website of his materials. I'll look it up in a minute, but I ran across several quotes of his today, but I'll just quote one of them today. It's called the cslewisinstitute.org online. He said, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. I want to say that again. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. So again, it's that idea of a realistic self-appraisal, right? Realistic self-assessment, not running ourselves down, not building ourselves up artificially. Humility is not thinking less of ourselves, but thinking of ourselves less. And that APA definition of humility that Alan talks about, they talk about it as less self-focused. Yep. And again, it depends on who we are, right? And what our coping style is, what our tendencies are. But if my style is to be overly self-focused, is to be thinking of myself less. And I am more open to experiencing gratitude in my life when I'm more connected to a sense of humility, a sense of myself as a person, as you've talked about a lot, Thom, just being on an equal plane with everybody else,
yep.
Right? With everybody else. I was looking, I tell you, if you Google gratitude practice, it's pretty amazing at this point in terms of our awareness of gratitude and the importance of gratitude in psychology and in emotional sobriety. It's amazing how many resources and tools and suggestions about how to practice gratitude and so on come up. One of them called positivepsychology.com, which is a whole approach that's developed in the last few years, had 28 benefits of gratitude practice, right? From increased relationships, improved relationships, decreased anxiety, decreased depression, even increased physical well-being, increased immune function. So I just invite people to take a look. That was at healthline.com. There's another one that's a really good resource. Very practical ideas about how to cultivate gratitude in our lives and all the benefits that cultivating gratitude can have. One thing stood out to me about that I hadn't really thought of before, which is I often think of gratitude, especially in the context of the 10th step, of involving other people, right? And responding to other people. But a lot of what was talked about in gratitude and what I was reading is appreciating the small things in life. There are some roses I walk by almost every day when I go for a walk, and I take time to smell them almost every day because it's one of my favorite smells in the world. Doesn't involve other people. It just involves a sense of gratitude and appreciation for something that I like, that has meaning to me. Another piece I wanted to mention that goes along with the unusual suspects that Alan got into when we started on the 8th step. We often don't talk about gratitude in terms of what we're grateful for to ourselves. What we're grateful for to ourselves. And I think we could do a pretty long list of things to look at, right? In terms of choices we make or don't make, actions we've taken or not taken, changes we've made in our life or not made, that it's important, I think, to take some time to develop and express some gratitude toward the part of ourselves that found a way or was motivated or found the motivation or the faith or the spiritual help or whatever. The part of ourselves that was able to take actions that were scary for us, that were challenging for us, that were difficult for us. So that's another little bit of a different slant I want to put in. Absolutely. I feel so much happier when I'm in a place of gratitude toward other people, toward nature, toward the world, toward all that I have been given and continue to be given by everyone around me. But in addition to that, I just wanted to add the notion of of expressing gratitude to ourselves for the progress that we've made, for the lessons we've learned, and for our own willingness, when we're able to be willing. So I'll leave it at that. And very grateful to you guys, Alan, Thom, and to all of you who are tuning in for these meetings. Thank you all very much. So I turn it back to you, Al.
I just want to say real quick is even gratitude for our survival skills before we got to recovery. You know, one of the things I tell people is the first thing you say to your inner child when you meet your inner child is, thank you. You're a genius. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here. You know, without any self-help books or anybody guiding them along the way, we've all found a way to this program or whatever program we're working. And we did that because among other things, we're survivors.
I hear a lot of people criticize the 12 steps that they're old-fashioned. I can understand that criticism. They were written back in 1935. Some people that are agnostic have difficulty with the word God used in the steps. For me, I look at the process that's involved. The forces that the 12 steps generate are so powerful that I think they're ageless. There's this interesting phenomena that happens when you work the steps. They create a charge and then a discharge. You know, the first step, we're powerless. Our life has become unmanageable. It creates this charge. You know, we're in big trouble and we don't know what to do. And then step 2 comes along and it says we have hope. That charge, that existential crisis that we have is resolved. What's happening here is parallel to life. We charge ourselves when we breathe in. When we exhale, we discharge. That's the rhythm of life. And the way I love to think about the 12 steps, it's helping us get connected to the rhythm of life so we can learn how to show up in a good way.